Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Finland once again, and that of course means that we're going to take a look at yet another Riku beer. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Riku Sanaksanaho, my Finnish beer mule living in Oulu in the northwest of Finland. It's thanks to him that you guys get to enjoy a steady stream of Finnish reviews here on the channel. Lovely guy, very knowledgeable about his beer. He's picked me out some awesome stuff. He seems to have his own beer mule network going over there in Finland, and he can get a hold of different things from different parts of the country, and then he sends them over to me in Sweden to review. So it's awesome. Riku, a massive thank you to you once again for making this review and all the other Finnish ones possible. As I've told you guys before, if you're not actually inside Finland, it's very, very difficult to get a hold of these Finnish beers. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. And this beer actually arrived in Riku box number 1, but until now I just didn't get around to reviewing it. But I'm very curious to see how it turns out, because I think this one could be a little bit of a beast. So yeah, for this review then, we're going to go to Jyväskylä, which is in the kind of middle of the southern third of Finland, if that makes sense. And we're going to have a look at my first beer from Panimoyhtiö Hiisi, if I've pronounced that correctly. But this particular beer is called the Ikiiurso. It comes in at 12% ABV, it's an Imperial Stout, and it's aged in Islay whiskey barrels. So yeah, this one I think could be really, really interesting. So Islay whiskey tends to be quite smoky in my experience, and you have to be a little bit careful when you age beers in Islay whiskey barrels, because it can really dominate the flavour of the beer actually, so you have to get the period of aging just right with these things. So I'm really curious to see how they actually manage this and how they balance it. But Riku has told me this is a very, very nice beer, and if he says it's good, it probably will be. And as I've told you in other Finnish reviews, I've been very impressed with the standard of Finnish beer that I've had, generally speaking, over the last little while. So yeah, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. Hopefully it's another interesting beer, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. It's always nice to introduce new Finnish breweries to you here on the channel as well. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Panimoyhtiö Hiisi. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Finnish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, because I still have a good supply of Riku beers to work my way through. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely, hugely appreciated. And I will apologise in advance for any bad Finnish pronunciations in this video, because some of the places and things are a little bit difficult to pronounce, but we'll do our best. We'll do our best. So yeah, this one then, to tell you a little bit about the brewery, onto my brewery notes. So Panimoyhtiö Hiisi, and this is one of the things I should point out as well. I learned this. Panimoyhtiö means brewing company, whereas Panimo is simply brewery. So these guys, I'll need to figure this out for posting the video, but I've seen them listed as Panimoyhtiö Hiisi, and I've also seen them listed as Panimo Hiisi. So we'll figure this out for when we post the video. But Hiisi, anyway, are based in Jyväskylä, which is in the western Lakeland region of central southern Finland. If you look at the map of Finland, you'll find it pretty much right in the middle of the bottom third of the country, where it gets a little bit wider, if you like. But the brewery was founded back in 2013 by Mika Silajärvi and Tato Hittala, and they were joined in the early stages by Mikko Mäkelä. So Mika had previously been involved at in the brewing at Stadin Panimo, who have featured on the channel before. I had a barley wine from them, if I remember rightly, and that was good. But he'd been involved at Stadin Panimo and acted as as their head brewer. And then Mika had run a company called Oluton, which sells small brewery products. Mikko was studying marketing at the local university, and he focuses on the marketing and sales side of the brewery. But these guys had to put a lot of work into renovating their brewery premises in the early days, and in the first year they produced around 30,000 litres, and by 2016 they'd grown this up to 180,000 litres of beer per year. But in early 2019, Tatu left the company to go and work for Tanker Brewery down in Estonia, and then Matthias Hufner was brought in from Brewery Helsingen to be the new master brewer. He's German, but he's been brewing in Finland for about 20 years, which is pretty interesting. I wonder how he gets on with the Finnish language actually, but you know, German grammar and things is quite complicated, so I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think Finnish grammar is even more complicated than German is. But these days they're producing around 250,000 litres of beer per year, and they also have a tap room and bottle shop in the centre of the city. But for a number of their beers, they use characters from Finnish mythology for the names and the artwork, and they also use a lot of locally grown and sourced adjuncts, such as like rye, chili, buckthorn and coffee. So yeah, they've collaborated with a lot of local companies and farmers and things like that for adjuncts for Imperial stouts and other beers that they've done. But as of May 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 300 different kinds of beers according to Suominen Pienpanimo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And for some reason, Untappd only has about 30 beers listed for this brewery, and I have no idea why actually. I don't know why that is. I've noticed that there's a few weird things going on with Untappd recently, but there's quite a few articles, and the Suominen Pienpanimo website, or Suomen Pienpanimo, whatever it is, they have 300 odd beers listed for this brewery, so I'm assuming that is going to be more accurate than Untappd is. But yeah, these guys seem to be very, very well respected, a very prolific brewery in fact as well, and as I say, it's nice to be able to review one of their beers here on the channel for you. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about this brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and if you're interested in all the different beers, then you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about those. But I think, you know, these guys seem to be a really interesting brewery, so it would be quite cool to go to Jyväskylä at some point and have a look at that sort of kind of eastern part, the kind of Middle Eastern part, if you like, of Finland seems to be where all the lakes are. So yeah, the central lakeland region. They call Finland the land of 1,000 lakes, and if you fly over Finland and land in it, you'll see exactly why. There's lakes all over the place in Finland, which is pretty cool. So yeah, definitely I need to get over to Finland for a beer festival or something and do some interviews with some of the different breweries, and of course go and see Riku in the north as well. But yeah, awesome stuff. Awesome. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer. I'll just let you have a little look at this one, at the artwork on this one, to see how we get on. So there's a few different versions of this beer. As I said to you, this one is a 12% Imperial Stout, and this is the Islay barrel-aged edition, but there's also an Oloroso cask and a bourbon barrel-aged version, and this beer apparently is named after Ikiiurso, which is a sea monster from the Kalevala poem, which is quite famous in Finland. And it tells you a little bit on the side here. This beer apparently was awarded the best stout in Finland of 2018 and 2019, and it says, astounding, sighed the tribesman in his hut. The trembling in his voice spoke of excitement with a dash of fear. Under his eyes, the liquid behind the glass, if you could call it a liquid, was heavy and viscous, like crude oil or tar. To call it black would be like calling the sun hot. It radiated darkness. It swallowed the light from hearth fire. As the tribesmen kept staring, the nearby stream started running more and more rapidly. One could hear the faint chiming of tiny bells from the nearby bog. The tribesman was not listening though. Absolutely astounding. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, I have to say I do like the artwork on this as well. It's like just an eye staring at you. So from what I gather, the Ikiiurso monster seems to be a little bit like Leviathan almost. It sounds a little bit like, you know, the Leviathan. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly how old Finnish mythology is, but maybe they're connected in some way, this idea of Leviathan. But yeah, nice bottle cap on this one. That will be going into my keepers. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. 330ml bottle. I can't remember exactly what we paid for this. I think this was maybe about €9 or something like that. Riku did send me a price list with all the different beers, but I always forget to look at it before I start filming. So yeah, I think it's all right. The cost doesn't matter. We just like having some Finnish beers. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Oh, this one doesn't want to open. This is a bit strange. There we go. Unusual that. Ooh, I've lost it. Stick it in there. But But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get it into the glass. The best stout in Finland of 2018 and 2019. So I think this could be quite special actually. Look at how thick that thing is. That is a bit mental. It is a little bit mental. This thing is thick as fuck. Damn. Have we got any sediment in it? Just very little actually. That's impressive. So there we go. Let me just line that up so my OCD is happy. But yeah. Well, when they said it was oily, you can see why. Absolutely. So this one, it's a lovely, you can see, as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this is a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. It's black as night pretty much. Even if you shine the light through this, you don't get much through it on the edges. Like you sometimes get a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola, Pepsi coloured edge to the beer. Not in this one really. You just get a little tiny amount of it. But this beer is as dark as they come. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use, and 2, the length of your wort boil. A big Imperial Stout like this is of course going to undergo a wort boil of like 4 or 5 hours, something crazy like this. And the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelized, thus you get a darker colour of beer. But yeah, it's quite interesting just to think about that. But remember, it's dependent in the first instance on the actual malts that you use. If you use black malts in a beer, then you're going to get a black colour of beer. But yeah, barrel aging and adjuncts, of course, can play a role in determining the colour of your beer as well. You can see there's a tiny little bit of head on this one, and the sort of foamy ring that we have around the edge actually looks as if it's kind of leaning toward the darker side of tan, but there's just a few wispy bits of foam sitting on the top of the beer. But I mean, overall, it does look pretty damn nice, I have to say. So so yeah, I certainly like how that goes together. So yeah, nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance. So yeah, let's have a look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. Oh, that's a monster. You can smell that. You can smell the Islay barrels a mile away in this beer. And this is what I said to you. Islay barrels have a tendency to kind of dominate and be a little bit forceful. You know, Islay whiskey tends to be quite smoky. I've had a good few whiskies from Islay, but I need to go over there and do the distillery tour at some stage and, you know, do a wee bit. That would be really interesting to do. Going out to Islay for a few days would be rather nice, I would say. But yeah, the aroma on that beer is absolutely beautiful. Very, very nice. So yeah, you can smell. Let's try and break this down for you then. So you can smell underneath this beer, you do get a little bit of that oaky woodiness, but this beer has a really strong kind of peaty backbone to it. And as I've told you in smoke beer reviews that I've done over the years, I absolutely love smoke beers and peated whiskies and things like this. But the Scottish peated smoke is markedly different to the German Rauch smoke that you get, for example. So, you know, the Scottish peaty smoke is a little bit more sort of earthy and grassy, if you like, whereas the German Rauch malt is a little bit more sort of meaty, if you like. It's a little bit more meaty and sometimes bready in a sense. Well, maybe bready's not the right word, but yeah, definitely more kind of meaty and maybe porky in a sense. So yeah, the backbone of this beer is all about that earthy, grassy kind of peaty smoke. You can smell that just forming the backbone of the beer, and then you get the wood underneath it. It's just peaty smoke just has this wet, grassy vibe to it. And you can smell that right away with this beer. But as I say, with Islay barrels, you've got to be careful with these because they really dominate. They can really dominate the flavour of a beer. And whenever it comes to Islay barrel aging, I would always recommend that you, if you try an Islay barrel aged beer, it's better if you're going to choose a version of a barrel aged Imperial Stout. Be aware that with Islay barrels, you have to really like smoke and peat to enjoy these properly, I think. I had a barley wine, an Islay barrel aged barley wine recently from the Netherlands, and that was an interesting one. It was the first time I'd had an Islay barrel aged barley wine, and for me it was interesting. I enjoyed it, but a lot of people that I spoke to said, "Oh no, we preferred, you know, the bourbon barrel aged ones and things like this." And I can see why that would work for a barley wine, if you like. So yeah, Islay barrels for me are definitely. I would always say to people that it's a bit of an acquired taste, that, in honesty, but yeah, the aroma of this beer is just beautiful. For me, I love it. But yeah, on top of that barrel aging component then, you can definitely smell some nice chocolatey malts in there. You know, you've got a mix of chocolate. You can smell like a sort of 70-80% cocoa thing. It does have a degree of sweetness, though. I do get a few elements of a kind of milky chocolate in there, but you can smell that higher cocoa and more dark and bitter chocolate as well. But it does come across as very smooth and very silky in a lot of ways, so that's quite interesting. There is a wee bit of brown sugar in there as well. You can get a little bit of a treacly molasses sort of thing, but this beer, as I say, the Islay barrels are so dominant in this, it's quite difficult to pick up other things. I mean, you can get one or two little nutty elements in there. As I say, you've got a mix of, you know, 70-80% cocoa chocolate, but then with a more milky chocolatey element coming out of it as well, and some big treacly molasses brown sugary elements in there as well. I don't get much of a toasty brown sugar out of this one. It's more of an oily brown sugary element that you get in there. But yeah, other than that, I think there's not sort of too much to report on the malty and barrel aging side of the aroma. The Islay barrels really just dominate this one, and the wood, actually, the woody components, they smell quite smooth in this one. Sometimes with these Islay barrel aged ones as well, you can get an element of charring to them. This beer really is very, very smooth in a lot of the ways it comes across. So that's worth noting as well. As I say, you can often get a little bit of harshness and charriness and things out of Islay barrel aged beers, but this one is you know, markedly smoother than some of the other ones that I've come across. So yeah, just take a bit of time and ponder that over. On the hoppy side of things then, remember, with a barrel aged beer, the hoppiness of these beers is probably going to have dropped out a little bit. And if this is the 2018-2019 edition of this beer, then probably a lot of the hoppy character is going to have dropped out of it. But I can still pick up a few little things. There's absolutely a little bit of a kind of earthiness in there. There's some nice floral aromatic-y components as well, and a little bit of a lighter grassy component. But yeah, the earthiness is is just sitting there in the background. That builds a good bridge with the hoppy side of things. There's a nice big floral aromaticity to it as well, like I said, and just a little touch of you know, just a little touch of a kind of grassy component also. So I really like how this how the green component of this does it. It just adds a little bit more depth to the beer, I would say, and it connects well with the barrel aging side of things too. But yeah, like I say, much of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one. I would be curious to try the non-barrel aged version of this, because they do have a non-barrel aged version. It would be nice to try that for a kind of comparison, if you like, and try the base beer as well as trying some of the other barrel aged versions as well. But yeah, the hoppy side of this beer does just add a little bit more depth, and having that wee bit of grassiness, I think, sort of connects quite well with the sort of subtleties you're going to get from the Islay barrels. But on the fruity side of things, I would say this beer comes across as being quite sharp. I'm getting a lot of raisiny and blackberry type notes out of this one. So yeah, there is a big sharp fruity component to this beer for sure. But underneath that, you do get one or two little elements of a sort of Christmas cakey, Christmas puddingy type thing. There are a few cakey elements to this beer sitting in there. But yeah, sharp raisins, sharp kind of blackberries, a good bit of an oily kind of plum in there. Yeah, there's a wee bit of an oily plum, maybe one or two sort of pruny elements and some dried fruit as well. But yeah, for me, it's the raisins that dominate. The blackberries are dominating as well. You've got a wee bit of a cakey vibe to the beer, sort of Christmas puddingy, like I say, bit of plum, bit of prune, then maybe one or two wee curranty elements as well. But yeah, it's the sort of oilier and sharper fruits that dominate this aroma. So take a little bit of time with that, and just take a little bit of time with that and enjoy the aroma of this, because this is a very interesting beer that you're not going to come across too often. But I think it's about time that we have a taste of this one then. So yeah, this one is the Ikiiurso, an Imperial Stout coming in at 12% ABV, aged in Islay Scotch whisky barrels from Jyväskylä, Panimoyhtiö Hiisi in Jyväskylä, in the kind of centre of southern Finland, if that makes sense, the central Lakeland region. So let's have a go at this beer and see how we get on. Once again, thank you to Riku for making this review possible. Let's see what we've got here. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and keep us. That thing is a monster. Islay barrels all the way. Yeah. This is like what I was saying earlier. Islay barrels are they can be very, very dominant in beers, and you get that right away with this one. So if you're not a fan of smoking peat, I think maybe you wouldn't enjoy this beer as much as I would, because I love smoking. I love, you know, Rauch malts. I love peated malts. I love all of these kind of things. So while the thing you can get straight away with this beer though is you can tell this is a very, very good beer. But if you're not a fan of the smoky and peaty sort of things, I'll say to you straight away, go for the Oloroso or the bourbon barrel aged version of this and get something a little bit kind of smoother. This is definitely one of the drier and kind of toastier, smokier barrel aged Imperial stouts that you're going to come across. So just bear that in mind with this one. If you're not a fan of the smokiness, go for the Oloroso or for the bourbon barrel aged version, or the base beer. I would guess the base beer is pretty interesting. But what I'll say, the other impression I have of this beer is that it's a very clean and very slick Imperial stout, this as well. So that's another interesting takeaway from this. But yeah, for me that's a very, very good beer. Yeah, I think I'll need to get Riku to try and get me a few more Hiisi beers at some stage. We'll need to have a little look at some more of these, because this is potentially one of the best beers that I've had out of all the Finnish stuff. And as I say, I've been impressed with a lot of the different beers that we've tried so far. But I can see straight away why this beer is so highly rated. But yeah, where to begin with this one then? Right away with this beer, you can feel that nice woody backbone to it that goes right across the middle of your tongue, but you get a lot of chariness out of this beer as well. So the barrel aging side of this beer is quite dry in a sense. It's quite spicy, it's quite charred, and that is absolutely forming the backbone of this beer, no question about that. But yeah, this one I can certainly appreciate how this beer goes about its business. You get on top of that kind of roasty, charry, woody sort of thing. The further you go into the aftertaste with it, the more that you get those kind of peated, the sort of earthy, grassy, peaty elements in there. That just kind of sits on top of the woody component of the beer in the middle third of your palate. You can really just feel that sitting there, and it's absolutely lovely. I really like how that goes about its business. So again, thumbs up to Panimoyhtiö Hiisi for this. This is for me, it's like a taste of home. I love this. So at least I know if I ever move to Finland, I can get a wee taste of Islay, which is good. But yeah, it's those components. That's just the backbone of the beer, but it's incredibly powerful. It really is very powerful. You can feel the sort of charred, woody elements going all the way to the back, into the back third of your palate. So that's definitely interesting. So yeah, this beer, pretty damn powerful. But yeah, let's try and have a look at the flavour sitting on top of that. It takes a wee bit of time for the peaty side of this beer to come out, but the wood, the spiciness of the wood and the charness and things that are in there go together just very, very nicely actually. Yeah, so on top of that though, as you drink more of it and as your mouth adjusts to it, that's one of the big things with these beers, you've got to let your mouth adjust to them. You get more of a chocolatey vibe comes out of this one. So let's focus on the middle third of your palate. So you can feel that sitting on top of the kind of peat elements there, you do start to get this high cocoa chocolatey note out of this one, 70-80% cocoa. So yeah, I certainly like how that goes about its business as well. It's really, really the chocolatey notes that you get out of this one are just you know, very, very, they're very dark, and I think that sort of matches well, and it kind of balances out the sort of roastiness and toastiness you're getting from the barrel aging as well. So having those high cocoa chocolatey notes in this one, it's like a layer just on top of the peat and the kind of woody elements, if you like. You know, you've got this layer of chocolate that just balances the beer out a little bit more. But then in the very centre of your palate, you do get a wee bit of a treacly molasses kind of thing. There is an element of brown sugary note to this beer. And in fairness, the more that I drink of this one as well, you do get the kind of sweeter element of the dark chocolate coming out in this one. But yeah, this is, the chocolatey layer in this beer is absolutely, you know, an 80-90% cocoa thing. 100%, absolutely. So yeah, that works. That really works very, very well in this one. But yeah, on top of that, as I say, in the very middle of your palate, you do have a wee bit of a treacly molasses kind of thing in there, and you can taste a little bit of caramel. Like in the very dead centre of your palate, you've got that sort of concentrated treacle molasses sort of thing. That's the booziness of the beer. Then as you move further out from that, it becomes a little bit of a kind of sweeter, sort of caramelly type thing, which I can certainly appreciate. So that's definitely worth noting as well. But other than that, I think there's not too much to report in that middle third of your palate. And as I say, for a barrel aged beer, this one just feels incredibly, incredibly clean, which I can really appreciate as well. But yeah, very smoky and a very sort of, I don't know if dry is the right word, but yeah, a very toasty and very charred barrel aged Imperial Stout, this one. So yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting. But yeah, on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, and you do get a little touch of a bready build up and then a roasty, well-fired bread crusty element in this one. But on the back third of your palate, again, you feel the kind of charriness of the wood coming out of this one, and then sitting on top of it, you get a little bit, you can feel a little bit of the yeasty flavour. So the flavour gets a little bit taller on the back third of your palate. You can just feel it's that little bit more yeasty. Then as you move further forward, you can feel the flavour just condenses down a little bit. So it just condenses down a wee bit like that. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, you can feel the flavour just kind of squashes down even more as you move further into the middle third of your palate there. So I can really appreciate how that goes together. But I think that covers the malty and the back and the barrel aging component of this beer. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, definitely quite a strong earthiness there again, which builds a good connection with the cherry and peaty side of the beer. But as you move further forward, it smoothens out a little bit, and as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more sort of floral, and it's a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic. But remember, when it's barrel aged, as I said, much of the hoppy component, much of the green component will have dropped out of this one, but you can still get the remnants of that on the edge of your palate there. So a wee touch of floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate, then around the front curve of the tongue, the beer is distinctly lighter and grassier as well. So you do get even a wee touch of zestiness on the front curve of your tongue as well. But let's focus on the front third of your palate and the kind of fruity part of the beer then. Another thing I'd say about this beer is that what you pick up in the aroma translates quite well into the flavour of the beer itself. But yeah, border between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there, but then you get that really well fired bread crust note sitting kind of underneath it. But then underneath the front third of your palate, you do have a little bit of a kind of smoother, woodier element to this one, which is kind of interesting. And you can, on the front third of your palate, just underneath, you can actually pick up a little bit of the sort of whiskey qualities. And as I've told you in other reviews, for me, when it comes to Scotch whiskey and the American bourbons and stuff like this, the Scotch whiskey is distinctively more kind of grainy and less sweet than the American bourbons. So on that front third of your palate, you can feel a smoother vibe out of the wood, but you also start to get some of the kind of more grainy sugars from the whiskey in there as well. So that's another interesting part of this beer. But then on top of that, of course, that's where you get the oily bubble, where those juicy, fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. I mean, this, I don't know what hop this one will have. It will have something like Eureka, or you know, a bit of Summit, or maybe even a Northern Brewer from Germany, which is popular in the Doppelbock. So it'll have something like that in it, this beer. But yeah, So if we go to the back of that front third of your palate then, on the very back of the front third of your palate, you do almost get a little touch of a kind of cakey vibe, a little bit of a charred Christmas puddingy kind of element there. Absolutely, but you get a lot of sharp raisins, and as you move further forward, you do get a wee bit of a juicy plum in there. But the front third of your palate it's actually quite dry in a lot of ways. So when you first take the beer in, you get sharp raisins, juicy plum underneath, maybe a wee bit of prune. Then as you move, as I say, the front third of your palate really dries out, and you've got the woody note and the sort of brown sugars from the brown grainy sugars from the whiskey. And as you move forward, you get a wee touch of figginess out of it, maybe a little bit of blackcurrant, and then on the front kind of half of that front third of your tongue, the front tip of your tongue, you'll start to get some sharper blackberry notes out of this beer. But yeah, this is definitely one of the kind of driest and cherriest barrel aged imperial stouts that I've come across for sure. So for me, who loves these Islay peated whiskies, then this is really nice. But it is an acquired taste if you're not used to it. So if you're not familiar with how with Islay barrel aging, go for the Oloroso or for the Oloroso or for the bourbon barrel aged ones, because Islay barrels can be very dominant, as I say. But yeah, this for me, I really like this one. This is an awesome beer, and it gets a massive thumbs up from me. But yeah, let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So like I said, this beer, it's definitely not the thickest of imperial stouts you're going to come across, and when you barrel age something, you always sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to get all these infused flavours. That's just an inherent part of barrel aging. But yeah, for me, I'd say that this one's kind of at the top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. It feels very clean as well. You know, you're always going to get, if you're in the middle of the Lakeland region in Finland, you know, you're going to get very clean water. So this beer just has this really clean vibe to it. You can feel the water quality in this beer. So lovely and clean. It's got a little bit of that kind of minerally type vibe to it as well, and it's almost got a wee bit of slickness also. But this imperial stout is quite highly bitter. This has got to be, you know, somewhere between 80 and 100 IBUs. It's probably at the saturation point, but some of that bitterness is coming from the barrel and the peat and things like this, and the cherry side of the barrel. But I think the hops will contribute to that degree as well. There is a wee bit of hoppy bitterness in this beer. It's difficult to kind of draw the line where it would be, because everything's kind of interconnected. But yeah, this is quite a high bitterness beer, this one. The malty side of things, like I say, it's quite, the malty side of the beer for me is quite smooth, and there is a wee touch of sweetness to it, but it's completely dominated by the Islay barrels. But that's common with this type of barrel aging. The fruity side of the beer for me as well is quite sharp, and it's got a good little bit of a clean, wet, slick quality to it. But it's a beautiful beer, this one, and I would highly recommend that you try this out if you're a fan of the Islay barrel aging like me. But otherwise, go for the bourbon or the Oloroso. I'd be very curious to try those. On the back, I haven't tried this one, so I'll need to see if it's possible for Riku to get a hold of one of those for me. But I'd love to try the base beer as well and just see what the original is like. But yeah, I'm just going to say thumbs up to Panimoyhtiö Hiisi. I mean, they've given this beer is a very good account of what these guys are capable of, so I've certainly enjoyed reviewing this. So yeah, hopefully more from these guys at some point in the future. We'll need to see what we can do. But yeah, this one was the Ikiiurso Imperial Stout Islay Barrel Aged Edition, coming in at 12% ABV from Panimoyhtiö Hiisi in Jyväskylä, in the kind of central part, the central Lakeland in southern Finland. So yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Thank you to Riku for making this review possible, of course. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers from this brewery are. Let me know your own thoughts on Islay barrel aging as well, and let me know what version of this beer you thought was the best one. But this has been an awesome review. I've really enjoyed this one. It's nice to find a little bit of a taste of Scotland almost in Finland. We do have another Islay barrel aged beer to have a look at, but we'll probably do that in a few finished videos time. We'll do a few other ones before we go and have a look at that. But yeah, this was awesome, and I'm glad that we got to review this. Thanks again for watching. Check out my social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slange, skål, cheers, keepis, and kitos.